Hey, it's Ryan with S&B Tanks, and today we're going to be doing an install on our 10-1003 for the 11 to 16 Ford Crew Cab long bed Powerstroke trucks. And we're going to be doing our install on the lift today, as you can see behind me. And before we get the truck up in the air, there's a few steps you need to take. We need to remove a skid plate and then position our lift pad correctly so that we're able to actually install the S&B tank once we remove the OEM one. And I'll show you right here on our tank outside of the truck. This is the frame rail side. This sits against the frame. As you can see, there's a relief right here near this front strap, and that's where we're going to be positioning the lift pad. I'll show you some more once we get under the truck. So now that we're under the truck, you can see the skid plate that I was talking about earlier, and this is what's going to hinder positioning a lift pad if you're doing this install on a 2-post lift. If you're using a drive-on lift, you won't have any issues, but we're going to go ahead and remove this now. The back two here, behind the rear strap, there's 2 bolts up top, 15 millimeters, 1 in the middle that I've already removed, and then 2 in front of the front strap, also 15 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and start removing them from the front backwards right now. So now that I've got all the bolts out, you can go ahead and just pull down on the skid plate and it should remove itself. There she goes. Since we're already down here, now we're going to remove a bumper bracket that sits up on the frame against the tank. And this is going to be a 13 millimeter located right behind the front tank strap, and it's easy to see with the skid plate removed. So I'll start removing that now. Now we're going to remove another bumper bracket on the frame. This one's in front of the front tank strap, located just in front of the tank. Although you need to be careful when you position your lift pad to not go too far out underneath the frame rail. It needs to be basically only touching the frame, as the S&B tank will hug that frame rail tighter than the OEM tank did. So those are just a few things to be cautious of before you get your truck in the air. So now that we're underneath the truck, our first step is going to be to remove the fill neck and vent line hoses underneath the bed right here. So we'll just be using a flathead screwdriver and popping these 2 off. So now that we've gotten our 2 hose clamps off, we're going to go ahead and pop the hoses off. And I like to just grab them and twist, and that'll generally free it right up. So you can see that one's already free. That's your vent line there. And then just grab, and sometimes it takes 2 hands. Or peel back right around the edges. And there she goes. And then your hose clamps come falling down. So now that we're under the truck and got our vent line and fill line removed, we're going to go ahead and get our jack centered underneath the middle of the tank here. And this is after we've siphoned the fuel and gotten into a safe level for us to remove. So I'm just going to pump this up as close to center as I can get without covering the straps up, and we'll remove the straps next. So now that we've got our jack positioned under our tank, we're going to go ahead and start removing our straps. And at this stage, if you actually had a skid plate equipped on your truck, your skid plate bolts are going to be right next to your strap bolts. So you're going to have your front strap, middle strap, rear strap, all going to be a 13 millimeter with 1 bolt on the drive shaft side and then 1 bolt opposite of it on the frame side, both again 13 millimeters. So we're going to start removing those right now. Now we're going to go ahead and remove all the connections from the sending unit. So this is going to be the electrical connector and the feed line and return line to the sending unit. I'm going to reach up over right now there's a pocket above the middle of the drive shaft joints here, about center in the tank, right above the sending unit. And I'm going to reach up and get those, and I'll show you those fittings after we get the tank down because the fittings can be a little bit tricky to get off.
Next, we're going to disconnect the electrical connection from the fuel sending unit. You're going to want to slide out this red tab. Depress this button and wiggle off. And again, it's this button here. Then you want to slide this tab out. Press and wiggle off. Next, we're going to remove the connectors for the fuel feed and return lines. Be patient, as this could be the probably the hardest part of the install if they're on there tight or they don't want to come off. Slide out this bottom portion of the tab. Our connector is a little broken because we've done the install quite a bit, but you can see this part's out. Depress the tab on the top, push down, wiggle,
So So now with the sending unit, all the connections removed and the straps loose, we're going to start lowering the tank. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the sending unit from the OEM tank. I'm going to use some compressed air before I do that and blow off the ridge right around the sending unit just to ensure we don't get any dirt or debris down in the bucket before we transfer it over to our S&B tank. So with now the dirt and debris cleaned out from around the sending unit lid, I'm going to go ahead and use a pry bar and a rubber mallet, and we're just going to hammer this locking ring off. And that's all it takes. So now that we've got the locking ring off, we're going to set our mallet to the side here and just carefully remove this bucket and pour out all the fuel back into the OEM tank. So now we've got the sending unit out of the tank, I'm going to go ahead and just use a paper towel and clean up some of this dirt and grime that's built up on here over the years. Once we've got that clean, we can go ahead and remove the OEM O-ring. Sometimes it doesn't come out with the sending unit, but most of the times it will. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the float from the original sending unit and take extreme caution when doing this. These resistor cards that the float rides on and tells the truck how much fuel is actually in the tank are extremely sensitive. So if you pry from the bottom and bend this resistor card, your reading's going to be all wrong. And it's going to screw up your distance to empty and your analog gauge. So I'll show you how to do this correctly. So if you want to be extra cautious, before removing your float, you can take a multimeter to the 2 pins in the sending unit connector here and put your multimeter on the ohms reading. And we'll show you right now what a good multimeter reads with a good known good resistor card. So 181 ohms at a dead fuel level, and then at full fuel, we're seeing about 10.4 ohms. And so check this number again after you remove your float and you're ready to install your sending unit into your S&B tank. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the float from the sending unit to install our new S&B float. And so what you want to make sure you do is you don't put any pressure far away from the actual resistor card. So I like to put a finger on the backside on the pole itself, as you can see in there, and then one right here under this part, and just pry directly upwards, and it'll come right out. So now I'm going to show you how to install the S&B float. Even though this is done inside the tank when you're installing your sending unit, it's easier to see right now. So the first step is to remove this sticker. And all the sticker is again telling you install the float when the bucket's inside the tank. And this keeps you from bending your float or messing up your resistor card upon installation. So we're just going to peel the sticker apart and just get it off here. Make sure you remove every last bit of it. You don't want any of this stuff getting sucked into your fuel system. So once that's gone, this is going to install the exact same way the OEM float removed. So you're just going to line it up from the top and just push down, and there's a little retainer clip right here and it'll snap right in. And I'm not going to snap it in right now because we're about to put this in the tank. So now we're going to go ahead and install the sending unit and the S&B float into your S&B tank. And so to do that, use your provided O-ring. That's going to go in the O-ring groove there. You're going to place your float into the tank first, and then align the tab on the sending unit with the arrow on the S&B tank, and then kind of wiggle your float around in your tank to make sure it lines up. And once you get the bucket in, it's a lot easier to do that part. And now with the bucket in there, I can actually clip my sending unit and start to clip my float into my resistor card here. I'm going to let it get a little more down before I clip it all the way in. It just clips into place. Now I'm going to align my tab for my sending unit with the arrow in the S&B tank. And also, before all this started, make sure you have your O-ring in place. Once that's good to go, your sending unit will press into place and you can get your locking ring, and I'll show you how to lock that down right now. So now we're going to install the locking ring onto the sending unit, and I've already got it started under all the tabs, but all you're going to do is press the locking ring on top of the sending unit. Make sure that the tab on the sending unit is still pointed at the arrow. Make sure your O-ring stays seated in the O-ring groove. And once you've got a little bit of engagement all the way around here, you can take your crowbar and your hammer, rotate it all the way around until this ridge is past the hump on the tank itself. So now we're gonna pressure test our O-ring for the sending unit. To do that, I'm just gonna poke a little hole right here in our filler neck cap. And then I'm gonna have my friend here he's gonna spray some soapy water around the O-ring and then plug off the 2 openings on the sending unit and then each opening on the S&B tank while I just insert a compressed air nozzle in there. And then we're not gonna add a whole lot of air here, and just continuously looking. And that's plenty of air, and you can still see we have no bubbles around the sending unit. So he's gonna go ahead and let off, and you'll be able to hear how much pressure. So that's a good pressure test. So now we're gonna go ahead and install all of our lines onto our S&B tank. We removed this line from the rollover vent when we were doing our pressure test, and this just pushes right back onto this barb fitting here. Now we're gonna move over to the OEM tank and just using a flathead screwdriver, remove the filler neck and vent line from the OEM tank. And once these are removed, it's pretty easy to just take them straight across, press them on, and try to remember which way they were oriented onto the vent line, just to make sure that they go to the same place they went to originally. Again, remembering the angle they were on, the filler neck and the vent neck. And lastly, before we install the tank of the truck, we're gonna go ahead and zip tie our rollover vent line to the filler neck. Make sure there's no sags in here. You don't want any fuel to trap air. So I like to get the zip tie started first to get it as tight as possible. And just pull this nice and tight. She's good to go, and then I just cut it. Now the tank's ready to go in the truck. So now we're gonna go ahead and center up the tank on our jack and start installing it into the truck. And we're gonna feed the fill and vent line over the frame rail during this step.
It's easiest to get the U-bolt on when the tank's not all the way up into place, so you can have room to get it over. But once the U-bolt on is in the front, we can start lifting the tank up all the way into the truck. Now we're gonna put the rear strap on first. This is the strap that has the 2 90-degree bends. You can get it finger tight, and then you can tighten it up more with the ratchet. Now we're gonna do the middle strap frame side. And the trick to get this in is we'll put the bolt in, and we'll probably have to pry up after we get it into the cage nut. Get on the other side of the brake line there. Now we're gonna be doing the last strap. This will be the front strap. We'll get finger tight on this side, then we'll go to the frame side and torque that one down with the ratchet. Now we'll be connecting the front strap to the frame. Again, use the bolt. You don't have much extra slop in here, so you might have to just use the bolt. There we go. To lift the strap into place. Then once you got it, you can press to get the thread started. Now we're gonna be threading on these washers and nuts onto this front U-bolt, since we already got the front support connected to the U-bolt. Now we're gonna be reconnecting the feed, return, as well as the electrical connector. It's gonna be hard to see, but we're gonna snap it down onto the nipple. Then we're gonna make sure to slide the locking tab in as well. So it'll be a yellow locking tab, a blue locking tab, then a red locking tab for the electrical. Now we're gonna be reconnecting the vent as well as the fill lines. When you put these hose clamps on, make sure to put them on in a way where you can tighten them down. So I'm gonna have them angled downward so I can just stick my screwdriver up and tighten them up. Awesome, the installation is complete. If you have any questions during the install, or if you have any questions before you do the install, please give us a call at 909-675-1313. And now is a good time to check over your complete install, make sure you have good clearance everywhere on the truck. And again, let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.